The following is a production of Sharkflight Media. Sharkflight Media. Sharkflight Media.
Now entering the nexus of geekery and guy world in 3, 2, 1. Mark.
Hello, IT. Have you tried turning it off and on again?
What's better than this? Guys being dudes.
This is the Dudes in Hyperspace podcast.
Hey kids, welcome back to another exciting edition of the Dudes in Hyperspace podcast. I am your host, Ian J. Malone. Going to be joined here in just a couple of minutes by my partners in crime. That would be, of course, Rob Howell, Kevin Steverson. Before we do that, got to pay some bills, and that would be to thank our presenting sponsors, Chris Kennedy Publishing. Doesn't matter what you're into, folks. If it's military, sci-fi, space opera, paranormal romance, urban fantasy, even stuff on the craft. If you fancy yourself as a writer, then they've got it all right there for you at Chris Kennedy Publishing. To learn more about them, go to their website on the interwebs, chriskennedypublishing.com. You can also check them out on Facebook. They're very active in their CKP, the Factory Floor, and 4HU Merc Guild groups. You can also reach out to any number of the CKP authors via any number of social media channels. If you want to know more about the show, just follow Sharkflight Media on Facebook or Twitter. You can also find us online at sharkflight.com. Email the show, dudesinhyperspace@gmail.com. Anywhere social media is sold, hashtag Dudes in Hyperspace. And, geez, Manise, I think that's like pretty well all of my P's and Q's. I think. Going to the clickers here to bring in my guys. Kevin and Rob, how are we doing this evening, fellas?
It's doing outstanding here in Georgia. Go right ahead, Rob.
No, Rob.
Yeah, I was going to get mine out of the way
go
before
ahead,
the
man.
epic rant that's about to come from Kevin here. I've had a pretty good week here. I've recovered from FactoryCon, which took a little bit, and I've got a lot of things going on. My weekly update was like, oh my god, I got to talk about this. I got to talk about this. Got to talk about this. It's
Dude,
great,
it was a
great
tweetathon. I serious. I saw that in my notifications on Twitter today. Rob, you have new tweets from Rob Howell. Like, all right, well, typically the way Rob does is he'll have his update, and then he'll have maybe one or two links to Amazon links for books for new releases and that stuff. It was like, all right, here's a tweet, and then here's another tweet, and then here's another tweet, and another tweet, and another tweet, and another tweet. I was like, holy crap!
And I almost added two more. I almost added one for the Salvage Title trilogy because there might be discussion later on about a new Salvage Title book, and there might be new discussion later on about a new Four Horsemen book. And in my update, I actually put the links to the Salvage Title trilogy and the Revelation cycle, the first 4 books of Four Horsemen. Nice. So it could have been worse.
All right. Well, seeing as how we didn't even get to 60 seconds into the show before we got to the subjects that I know the man wants to talk about, Kevin, I'm just going to go ahead. Actually, you guys hold that thought. I'm going to grab something here really quick.
Ladies and gentlemen, hear ye! Hear ye!
On the stump.
All right, Brother Steverson, your Braves are World Series champions for the first time since 1995. Your Georgia Bulldogs are hands down, it's not even debatable, the best team in college football. Your Falcons may or may not be on the precipice of a turnaround here. I don't know. I mean, crazier things have freaking happened. The Braves just won the World Series, and in stunning fashion, by the way. So, brother, the floor is yours. Enjoy it. Just don't make it 30 minutes of our show.
I'm not going to, but I'm going to touch a little something else too because my Hawks are playing 500 ball, but look really good, and they're you just don't know what's going to happen with the Hawks either. And of course, Atlanta United, as far as soccer, they've already won the championship before too, but they're really good. So I think sports is just focused in the state of Georgia right now, and it's I'm happy to be from Georgia, but it is unusual to see that many things happen in one state. Sure. I will tell you this.
Your NASCAR driver may well win his second straight championship this weekend.
Yeah, he's from Dawsonville, so yeah, that's true. Now, Georgia is allowing almost a touchdown a game, so we're going to work on that defense a little bit. But yeah, it's about an average. After 8 games, I think they're allowing a touchdown a game average. So that's something we have to work on there. No, but in all seriousness, Georgia, the UGA, we'll start with UGA, then we'll go to the Braves. But UGA, they beat the stink out of Florida, beat them like they stole something. And on that game, they beat them, 31-3? And
wait,
Alabama.
What team did they beat again?
The Florida Gators.
That's
we
not
know
my
any-
team.
No, it's not
Oh,
your team.
That's not
No.
my team.
Just,
no,
it's
no,
just
no,
eight-
no.
no.
That would be
He's-
Terry
he's-
Maggart's team.
I was-
I
I-
am
that-
I'm
yeah.
the arch rival, Florida State Seminoles,
But,
sir. You
but
get
just
your facts
something
straight.
I wanted to point out. No, wait, there was 34-3. But one thing I wanted to point out is Alabama beat Florida also, but it was 31-28. So when Alabama and Georgia meet, it's I think Georgia's going to take it this year. But on to the Braves. Yeah, the Braves they didn't even hit 500 ball till August 4th. Literally, think about that. They weren't even playing 500 ball till August 4th. They had so many injuries in the backfield. They had, in the outfield, they had to go and pick up players, and they picked up 4 really good players. But yet these were players that other teams were willing to let go. And with that, they went right on into the locker room, and there was no issues. It's like they'd been there all year, and you see the results. They played really good down the stretch. A lot of home runs out of that outfield. So it's pretty exciting. That's the second time I've seen my Braves win the World Championship, win the World Series. So who knows when we'll do it again. I'm not gonna. Baseball's a fickle game. People get hot, people get cold. I can't even sit here and say they'll do it again next year because you just never know. You don't know. A team with 108 wins got knocked right on out of the playoffs. So you just never know in baseball. But yeah, I think the focus is on Georgia and Georgia sports right now.
No doubt about it. They are very much dominating all things in the world right now in the sports community, for the most part.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
good on them.
And I'm perfectly willing to put a shout out to Mr. Maggart, about, Florida.
Georgia beat them like they stole something, and that's just the fact,
I'm not going to throw any stones. We've still got to face those guys down in Tallahassee. And I believe we do that in the swamp this year. I think we're going to be competitive, but I don't know that we've quite got enough horsepower to be able to hang with those guys. Still too many 4- and 5-star recruits on that Florida squad for us to be able to hang with right now in our current form. But all right.
That's, real quick on that. One of the things why UGA is doing so well is their recruiting. There are 17 5-star players on that team.
Oh, it's insane.
17.
Yeah, it's
and
insane.
more coming. So,
well, and listen, dude. When you've got 100-year-old, generational after generational boosters with deep pockets, and in the age of NIL, you can do that.
Right,
And that's
yeah,
why the
it's true.
Georgias, the Alabamas, the Floridas, the Texas A&Ms, the Texases, the Oklahomas. That's why they are going to forever dominate in this era now, because frankly, they can pay more to recruits to come to their schools. So,
Right.
Yeah, but
Well,
how
and this-
different is that? Alabama's always in it. Georgia's always in it. Clemson's always in it. You get, these are the same teams. I get your point, and we've had this discussion before, but I don't know that the actual change will be that different in the long run.
I don't know.
It's never going to change because 4 years from now, you're not going to get a kid who's a 5-star to say, yeah, I'm going to go play for Iowa. 1 or 2 might, but you're not going to get 17.
Yeah.
It's just not going to happen.
Well, and then they will show up on campus and decide that they want to leave in a semester when they're not declared the
Hey,
starter.
this section was called On the Stump, so I do have a complaint. I need to raise it right now, and it involves Florida.
We did jump in on you, so I'm sorry.
Florida State and Florida, they play home and away like it should be, right?
Yes.
We do that with Alabama and Georgia. We've done home and away. The Florida Gators will not come to Athens. They want to play in a neutral site, and that's all they'll sign for. And oh, by the way, the neutral site's an hour from their home stadium in Jacksonville. It's ridiculous. They are afraid to come to Athens. I said it, let it get out to the entire world.
See, this is the point where I have to learn how to do one of those little clippies that takes a little stretch of sound from your podcast, and you can blast that out to social media, and we could just tag a whole bunch of the official Florida Athletics Twitter account, Florida Boosters, just blast it out there, and the whole world can be like, that Kevin Steverson's an a-hole, sir.
Hey, they won't sign it. They won't sign a home and away. They will not.
I'd be interested to see what the dollar figures on that. Florida and Georgia both make a ton of money from the world's biggest cocktail party down in Jacksonville. So that's a money train for everybody involved, not just Florida. And far be it from me to stick up for the University of Florida. I'm not going to do that. I'm just saying that's a game steeped in tradition with a whole lot of money for both people, for both squads.
But the money would still be made in their home stadium and our home stadium. Our home stadium holds over 92,000 people. Jacksonville doesn't hold that many.
Yeah, no, I'm with you, man. You're preaching to the choir. I'm a home and home guy. I hate neutral site games in regular season college football. This is not the NFL. That's not what that's supposed to be. It's supposed to be we go to Tuscaloosa one year, they come to Tallahassee the next year. You go to Florida this year, they come to Athens next year. And on
There
down
are
the line that it
exceptions.
goes.
There are exceptions.
I guess.
Even though
but you're
I'll give
neutral
you one
field.
very specific one.
Okay.
The border war between Kansas and Missouri. Kansas football, okay, we don't need to go into its long and illustrious history, but same is true for Florida, to be honest. Since we're no longer in the same conference, playing in Arrowhead, which is where they've played the last couple of times they've played, given that it's about the same, it's not too dissimilar. It's about 50 miles from Lawrence to Arrowhead, and it's about 40 miles from Lawrence to Arrowhead, and it's about 120 miles from Columbia to Arrowhead. But Kansas City has got a ton of fans from both. It's actually a prime place for that particular one, and I'm sure if we sat down and looked at it, we could find other ones. But you're right in general. If you're in a conference, you should always do home and away. Got to give fans for both sides a chance to really have their own time together.
Sure. Absolutely. Well, guys, as long as anybody who listens to this show knows we could take this for another hour and a half minimum, that is not a problem. We do
and Maya might want to get her turn.
Maybe. We do have an interview, and we're going to get ready to bring her on here in just a second. But before we do, I want to set this up, all right? You guys know I love food. Anybody who follows me on social media knows I like to eat some vittles, like to talk about vittles. We like to talk about vittles on this show. We also talk a lot about books, writing, publishing, the craft, and all that sort of stuff. So when we sat down to try and find somebody who could come on the show that could kind of fit the bill of either one of those, we never dreamed in a million years we'd come up with somebody who could do both. And that's exactly what we've got. So joining us on the Dudes in Hyperspace tonight would be none other than editing extraordinaire and noted foodie critic and poster of some of the most beautiful food pictures I've ever seen on social media. That would be Mia Kleve. Welcome to the Dudes in Hyperspace. Mia, how you doing?
Hi, doing great.
I got to tell you, and I know we said this before, but I'm going to say it so the listeners have got it. Like, I have a drink over here, and every time I mispronounce your name, I'm going to hit that because my sister's name is Mia, spelled exactly the same way. My phone, which has a speech reader on it because I'm sight impaired, reads your name as Mia, and then it reads your last name as Kleve instead of Cleve. So I understand that it's Mia Kleve, but at some point I'm going to flub on that, and all of you guys are free to make fun of me.
Yeah, you just did.
Well, I was making a point, but on principle and setting the bounds here, I'll... All right, so we're locking and loading. All right, well, let's go ahead and get to the guts of it here, Mia. First off, thanks for coming on to the show. I'm going to start from the top here with food because it's really... Well, it's just frankly one of my favorite freaking things, man. At what point did you go from being someone who just enjoys food, like most people, to being, I mean, from my money, someone who really, really does have a pretty sophisticated palate? The stuff you post on social media, whether it's the recipes that you cook or just the pictures of the food that you sample while you're out, are very sophisticated. They're very well thought out. Like, you really go into some details, and that by definition makes you a foodie to me. So at what point did you make the transition from just being the everyday person who likes to eat to being someone who was really very analytical about this stuff?
Well, that would probably be when my boyfriend, Matt, and I started dating. Well, no, actually, when we started being friends. So that would have been almost 30 years ago. We started dating about 20 years ago. So we've known each other a long time. But he loves food, too. And somewhere along the line, you get used to the same things that you grow up with. So you you make the same things that you grew up making, and you eat the same things you ended up eating. And somewhere along the line, you have to have somebody who kind of shakes you out of that. And so the first thing that Matt did for me was we went out for Ethiopian food. And unfortunately, the little restaurant that we used to go to initially has since closed down, but luckily we've managed to find a replacement place. But one of the great things about Ethiopian food is the good restaurants have what's basically a sampler platter. So you get the meat sampler and you get the veggie sampler, and then they just throw it all onto this enormous tray with which is lined with injera bread, which is their tortilla type bread, but it's spongy.
Yeah.
So it just soaks up all of the sauces and the dressings or whatever they put on the vegetables and the meats and everything. And then they give you a bunch more because there's no silverware. And you just use the bread to pick up the food and eat it. And I've had people go, so what do you like? It's like, I don't know what any of the stuff is. I don't know if it's beef or if it's lamb or if it's goat or what. You can usually tell chicken because they'll put like a drumstick in it. But other than that, you don't really know what type of meat you're eating. And I'm the kind of person that's like, if I like it, don't tell me. Just don't tell me.
Sure.
Because I'm enjoying it. I want to keep enjoying it. And sometimes I will ask, like when I was a kid, the first time I had Rocky Mountain oysters. I didn't know what they were. I was given a great big plate of them and some ketchup to dip them in. I was halfway through the plate and my friend said, do you know what you're eating? And she told me, and then I just kept eating. She's like, you're going to keep eating? It's like, I'm halfway through the plate. There's nothing I can do at this point.
Okay, so for those listening down in the South, and we do have quite a bit of our listenership that's down here in the South and the Southeast, I'm sure they've heard the term Rocky Mountain oysters. They may have even seen it mentioned in a Chevy Chase film at some point. But for those listening at home that aren't familiar with that particular delicacy, what exactly are Rocky Mountain oysters?
Rocky Mountain oysters are usually procured when they castrate all of the bulls on the farms. And so they take the testicles and they'll slice them and then they'll bread them and deep fry them. And that's what it is.
Proof that you can deep fry anything and it's good, ladies
Pretty
and
much.
gentlemen. All right, well now...
And really, if you don't know what it is, I mean, you would just think they almost look like calamari.
Okay, I'll take your word. I've never had Rocky Mountain oysters. I will admit to being that guy that's like, there's just some lines I can't cross. That's a bridge too far for me. I'm adventurous. I'm adventurous, but I'm not that far out there. So, all right. Well, now
understand that.
You are a very, clearly you are a very adventurous person when it comes to trying new food. And that's awesome. I love going to places myself where they'll let you just demo a lot of different stuff. You know, Argentinian steakhouses and stuff like that are really cool just to go sample new things. But now you also cook, and you're all over social media on a regular basis, posting pictures of things that you have prepared at home. We're also very big fans when you post the recipe for those, by the way, just putting that out there for future reference. At what point did you really start to delve off into that and start playing around with your own foods and experimenting with your own flavors and your own takes on stuff?
So that usually starts out with, so it started out when I was first living on my own. And of course, when you're living on your own and you've got your first real job and your first real apartment and your first real grocery bill, and you're
right.
like, so how do I make my grocery budget stretch for however many weeks your pay period is? And so sometimes you might have half of a recipe, but you don't have the other half. So now you have to figure out how to make spaghetti with ground beef and canned tomatoes as opposed to steak and spaghetti sauce, or even trying to make your own homemade sauce or something like that. So just having to experiment and figure out how all that type of stuff cooks down as compared to other prepared stuff that you can buy. So I'm not a huge diehard when it comes to everything has to be homemade. I'm a huge fan of Sandra Lee's semi-homemade.
Yeah.
And if you've seen my red chili recipe, you know what I'm talking about. It's like 2 cans of this and 3 cans of that. And if it's pre-prepared stuff, yeah, that works. And you open the can and you dump it in, that's fine as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah.
Because it's pre-measured, you know what you're getting, and if all you've got is 20 minutes to throw something into the crock pot,
Sure.
then use what you got.
Yep.
So I got really good at that. Luckily, I'm one of those people that I don't always have to taste to know what something's going to turn out like. So I have some people go, well, how much of that do I put in? Well, until it smells right. And they're going, but how much is that? It's like, well, until it smells right. So that's my method of cooking is it's got to smell right.
I can get on board with that. You know, it's funny you should say that about basically doctoring things. Rachel Ray has built her entire empire off of that. I mean, I used to live off of 30-minute meals. Like, that was the deal for those of us who are super busy. And listen, the fact of the matter is, even in college, you get sick of eating TV dinners, man. You know, like, that was the one thing my mom beat into my brain when I was a kid was, listen, you're going to get tired of eating out. I know you love Guthrie's. I know you love Whataburger. I know you love all these things. You're going to get sick of it. Learn how to cook the basics. And you don't have to be a gourmet chef to do that. You can take stuff that's already out there and make something that's nice and not only feed yourself, but feed other people. And that's when the real joy kind of happens with a lot of this.
Right. So one of the first things that I learned to modify was ramen, because let's face it, ramen is the cheapest thing you can get your hands on. But so are frozen vegetables, bags of frozen vegetables. So I would take the package of ramen, and then I would throw in a handful of frozen mixed vegetables, and that's what I would have for dinner. If I had a little bit of extra money, I'd get a thing of canned chicken, throw that in too. So now you've got actually a soup as opposed to just noodles. And that's basically how I started cooking, on top of the stuff that I learned to cook when I was living at home, was just, what have you got, what goes together, because of course there's some things that you can't throw in there, and then you just have to remember that. So there have been recipes, and I can't even think of anything off the top of my head, but something that I may have come up with, 15 years ago, and then I'll be in the grocery store and I'm like, oh, I should make that again. So I grab all the stuff for it and haul it home. And then if you're just fresh vegetables when you can, frozen vegetables if you're not sure what you're going to be doing, is always a good way to do it. Kroger, which is King Soopers out here in Colorado, has frozen bags of mirepoix, which is the celery, carrots, and onion. Mm-hmm. And then they also have the Cajun version of that. So it's the peppers, celery, and onion, I think. Mm-hmm. So I've got a bag of that in my freezer too. And it's just something, so when you are in a rush, you just throw that in and you've got everything already there.
Yep. I have vegetable beef soup on my menu for this Sunday, actually, because we plan out our menus here at the house. We love to eat out in our house, but, I mean, good Lord, you can break your paycheck, particularly nowadays, doing that. So we plan all of our meals, and, we actually have that on the menu for, I believe it's Sunday. And, we take the exact same approach. I'll obviously season my meat, and I have different things that I like to do with that, but it is all about thrift, man. And when you can just get you a good bag of frozen soup vegetables, which they carry at the Publix's down here, I don't have to chop onion and celery and potatoes. All of that stuff can be right there ready to go. And as long as you're prepared to have a little bit of extra broth from the water that melts off of the frozen stuff, and you plan for that, I mean, rock and roll, dude. You just cut your prep time down by 30 minutes. Absolutely.
Well, and sometimes I'll have, so you get the crudité, the veggie trays, if you've had guests over, and you end up with, you have the Super Bowl party, and now you've got 20 pounds of vegetables. Sure. Because everybody brings a veggie tray. So what you do is, if you have a little bit of time, you take those and you can chop those and make your own up and stick them into Ziploc bags or freezer containers or whatever, and you don't waste it. If you separate them out, you can use them for different things, or you can throw a few of them together so they're ready to go. I've done that before. The other thing that I do is I try to buy meat in bulk, because it's just me and Matt. And so I separate everything out into meal-sized stuff, and then I can thaw it out faster, or I can take something out of the freezer, throw it in the fridge, which then it takes about 2 days to thaw out, so that it gives us a couple days if we don't eat it right away. And that's always a trick for having fresh meat on hand, and not having to worry about, oh, do I have to go to the grocery store? Because especially the last, year and a half now, year and 8 months, going to the grocery store at a moment's notice isn't the quick trip that it used to be.
Yeah, no.
Well, and going out to eat isn't always an option anymore, because your favorite restaurant might not be around anymore because of what's happened and things like that. So we found out that we got really good at having pre-prepared stuff in the fridge. So one of my go-to, and you've probably seen it on social media, is I buy packs of chicken tenders So they're a little bit bigger than the brand that I buy. They have several. They've got the breasts, they've got the tenders, and then they've got something else. But they're 3 different sizes. Breasts are just way too big to have on hand for lunches and stuff. But these tenders that I get are perfect. So you can put it into a sandwich, you can put it into soups, you can put it into spaghetti, whatever. And actually for dinner tonight, I cooked a bunch of them up and threw some mozzarella cheese on it, heated up some spaghetti sauce, and cooked up the pasta. And that was dinner.
Nice.
So, and you just get good. So things that I keep on hand in the fridge, pre-prepped, are sliced green onions, mushrooms that, so cremini mushrooms, which are a little bit meatier than the white mushrooms that we grew up on.
Okay.
I cut and saute those and then throw them in the fridge. And then these chicken tenders, because I like green onions on everything. The mushrooms are good for spaghetti sauces, for soups, for going on top of steak or something like that. And then the chicken, like I said, you can make sandwiches. You can, if you just have 2 seconds, you need to grab something, you can take one of those because they're already cooked, they're already seasoned, and they're pretty much finger food. But I can either grill them or I can fry them in the pan, and so they're fairly healthy. They're not breaded or anything like that.
Yeah. Well, 2 things.
It's just a matter of doing that.
2 things that your 2 themes that you're hitting on here that really, really resonate with me are thrift. All right. And we've covered that. We're all very busy people. For those of us who have full-time day jobs, we have families, then we have side hustles like writing and podcasting. Our time is very important to us. It is, you could make the argument, a more valuable commodity than money in some respects. Because it is so finite. So having stuff that's ready to roll that I can have minimal prep time on and throw together, or that Natalie, my wife can have, that's paramount to us. But another thing you touched upon there for a second, and I'm a huge fan of this too, is not wasting things. And when, like you said, when you've got a big pile of perfectly good vegetables sitting right there from a Super Bowl party, take a couple of minutes to dice that up and throw those in the freezer. Because when you've already got your vegetables stored, you've already got your meat stored, you can do all kinds of stuff. I mean, you can even go so far as to pre-make, and my mother-in-law does this actually, spaghetti sauces, taco meats, anything for Mexican, meats, beans, stuff like that. She'll cook all of it in advance and then freeze it, and then she won't have to cook all week. She'll just, all right, I feel like having spaghetti tonight. Let me pull that out this morning and put it in the fridge. It'll be thawed enough by the time I get out. All I got to do is make my pasta, and I'm good to go. So
Right,
I'm a huge fan of both of those.
So I used to use Ziploc bags, but one day I realized I was going through a lot of Ziploc bags. So I actually hopped onto Amazon, and I found these really great, they're kind of flimsy, but they work for what I need them for, because they're not airtight, so whatever's in them is not going to sit in the freezer for 2 years without me knowing what it is. And I can use them in either the fridge or the freezer, but they're little plastic containers. The smaller ones will hold exactly a pound of meat without any problems. And what I do, I put these, I don't know if you've seen them, they're the black labels that you can use like a chalk pencil or a white, the white removable ink. Yeah. So I just put what it is and the date I threw it in the fridge or the freezer, either one, and then I can put it away. And then when I go to pull something out, I do that with lunch meat. I do that with the ground beef. I do that with sausage packets because we really like the sausage, but they come in 5 or 6 packs. And of course, 2 people, you don't need to be eating 5 or 6 sausages at a time. But for the lunch meat...
Hold up. Yes.
Steve's thoughts on this. Go ahead, boy.
1 pack for me, 1 pack for you.
There you go. Sometimes, I mean, it depends. I mean, there are days it's like, okay, so we're having people over, and you just kind of sit and eat and eat and eat. And oh my goodness, FactoryCon, we ate so much food.
I still hate that I missed that. I really do. Next year, people.
Absolutely. But so the lunch meat, I put a half a pound in the freezer and a half pound in the fridge, and then when I take the one out of the freezer, I just remove the date and then redate it. So when I stick it in the fridge, I now have the new date, and that gives me, say, a week to use it up before I have to consider throwing it out because it's been out too long. But even if you use Ziploc bags or whatever, just labeling it and putting a date on it so you know what it is and when you made it or whatnot. That's the best way to make sure that you're cycling through everything. And I mean, I know this is stuff that they tell you when you're trying to get started, but you're like, yeah, whatever, you never listen, so you have to relearn the whole thing again.
Well, now we've talked a lot here for the last few minutes about thrift, and that's certainly, very applicable to a whole lot of people in our field of work, people that we run with. But now, you are no stranger to cooking some very extravagant meals. I've seen some of your pictures on Facebook that you put out there, and these are meals that took time and a lot of care and a lot of preparation went into making something that is very beautiful, that presents very, very well artistically. It's a lot of color, a lot of flash. And based off of the comments, they were absolutely incredible. So the question I have for you is this. If I was to go poll, all right, Mia Kleve's friends, Mia Kleve's, damn it. All right, stand by. All right, if I was to go.
1, 2, 3, drink.
Yeah. Veneer. If anybody gets that reference, tweet me at ING Malone. Dang it. Tweet me.
You also have to drink if you don't pronounce your own name correctly.
It's touche. All right, tweet. Yeah, if you got the Veneer reference, tweet Ian J. Malone, and I'll send you a book or something. All right, so if I was to go poll any of Mia Kleve's friends and say if you could have Mia cook you one meal, what would you choose? What do you think would be the go-to for most people?
I think the go-to would actually be probably my chili.
Okay.
The red chili that I make, which is ground beef, kidney beans, pinto beans, tomato sauce, diced tomato, the stewed tomatoes, green chilies, bell pepper, onion, and then of course spices. I think that's everything.
Okay.
Yeah, that sounds right.
I love chili big time. I'd be all over that.
And it's funny because people were like, "Oh, well, you don't put beans in chili." It's like, you don't put beans in chili. I put beans in chili, so deal with it.
We put some beans in chili in the Malone house. You can, You can rest assured that's a must. We don't, unless it's Cincinnati chili, which is a completely different animal, like your Skyline stuff. No, we're team bean all the way down here in the chili.
So, quick story. Colorado has a couple of outdoor events that both Matt and I have participated in over the years. And one of the events is a camping event, and they do what's called stone soup on Saturday night. And basically what it is everybody donates something, everybody who's coming to the event, and then there are volunteers who come into the kitchen, and then they pick the ingredients and then make something for the stone soup. And you have to put it in one of those industrial, I don't even know how big those gallons are, but the ones that are about 3 feet high and about 18 inches wide across. So those big pans, the ones. So you have to fill this whole thing with food, and it has to be something that can be scooped out and served, because it's basically, get in line. You get a bowl, you get a bowl, you get a bowl, and so on. We had one guy who had clearly not cooked with conventional rice before, and he fled the kitchen before we could tell him he had to watch his own pot. He ran away. Smart man, because, oh my God, did we want to kill him. But I ended up with, somebody had donated venison, and I think it was steak. So I needed like 3 pounds of meat, so I was able to get 3 or 4 pounds of meat. And then I found all the stuff, and I made the chili. I had people trying to come back for seconds, and I had people going, "Yours is the only pot that is empty at the end of the night." It's like, okay, yeah, it's just chili.
That's awesome. It sounds like one of those Guy Fieri shows where you just like show up at the store and they give you a pack of stuff, and they're like, "Make something." And you have to just be creative and pull something together that's good.
That really is what it was. So, I mean, the hardest part was being able to get a hold of a protein, and then whether or not I was going to have enough beans. And luckily, because I had the protein and I was able to find some beans, then it was just having enough to fill the pot. So, but it worked out really well, and I had people trying to come back for seconds, like I said, and other people that showed up after everybody else had already cleaned it out going, oh, but I didn't get any.
All righty.
So, yeah, I think I'd have to say the chili.
Okay. Well, if that is the go-to food for everybody else, if that would be the one meal that they would get you to cook, what is your favorite meal? If you can cook one meal, time is not an option. You've got all day if you want to pour all the love and care into a meal that you want. What are you cooking? What's your favorite that you do?
I don't know, because I just like food at this point, and it's starting to show. Probably the chili, but then I would do cornbread.
Okay.
With it too. And I found, what's her name? Puts butter in everything. Good Southern cooking.
Paula Deen?
Yes.
Okay.
Her cornbread recipe.
Oh, yeah.
I found that.
Anything you get from Paula Deen is going to be pretty solid. So, yeah, if you got the time to put into it.
Oh, I just remembered. The other one would possibly be, so another friend of mine, he posted a picture of what he calls butter swim biscuits. And I know I've posted this. So it's a wet dough.
Okay.
And you melt a stick of butter in the 9x9 pan. And then you pour the wet dough in. And then you do a brief score on once you've gotten it evened out, you score it. And you throw it in the oven. And you can watch the butter just bubbling and bubbling. But when you pull it out and set it to cool, all that butter's just soaked into the biscuits.
Oh, God. Holy cow, man. It's like a coronary on a plate, but I bet it tastes awesome.
Oh, it is. So then you put a little bit more butter on it and some raspberry preserves.
Oh, wow.
I'm in. I'm in.
Oh, that is awesome. So, all right.
I'm in too, but you should wait till you have my butter pie recipe. But that's down the road.
Oh,
okay. Well, I'm not really good at pies. I can do the biscuits, and I can do like the banana breads and
love
the
banana
biscuits.
Bread. I am a sucker for some banana bread, man.
I've got my mom's recipe for banana bread, and that turns out really, really good too.
Oh, bring the noise at FactoryCon 2022. Just put.
I think I'm gonna have to. Yeah, I'm gonna have to figure out how to. I'm gonna have to ask everybody to bring a banana.
Yeah, I'm thinking I'm probably going to try and find a way to get some barbecue done and up there for next year. I know Yvonne and that whole crew, they're like, I want to try barbecue. Like, I fear I may have talked this up far better than it is. Like, it's straight up just redneck barbecue, but everybody seems to like it in our house.
Oh, your barbecue looks amazing. It really does. I'm really jealous some of the times when you're like, oh, well, I just do this and I throw it in, and it's like, yeah, but you know what? Sometimes just throwing it together, because again, it's like, oh, a little bit of this and a little bit of that, and oh, I know I did this last time, so we'll try that again. And nothing is ever the same twice.
Well, time is the enemy of barbecue. Like there is nothing thrifty about barbecue. If you want really good, smoky, quality barbecue, that you do have to put time into. And I mean, when I do a Boston butt, I typically don't do anything less than a 10-pounder, and that's 9-10 hours. Plus, and that's not even including your brine time and all that, which is typically about 2.5 days for me.
Well, I know we had. George, Yvonne's husband, had pork tenderloin that he smoked.
Oh yeah,
and oh my God.
Yep. Yeah, I don't know that I want to go head to head with that. I know my man George can throw some vittles on a plate.
Oh, that was amazing. Mm-hmm. And everybody else is like, oh well, I'm going to take a little bit of this. I'm like, just put 2 pieces of that right here.
Yeah. Oh yeah. So, all righty. Well, it was interesting that we were talking about chili here a second ago, and that you said that red chili is your preferred route on that. Something else that is very red in your life is the ink that you put onto manuscripts. So let's start out the top with that and start to shift gears into Mia Kleve. Safe on that one. Mia Kleve, the editor. And I want to start by talking about your company. We'll get to your roots and how you got into all this a second ago, but you run a full-fledged, full-service editing boutique company. So tell me a little bit about Marked Up Editing and what it does and what services it offers.
Okay, so for Marked Up, I actually started out just doing straight editing, so like the dev edits, the line edits, the copy edits, and the proofing, which I've been explaining to people recently that with the advent and the explosion of self-publishing and small publishers, proof and copy editing are pretty much hand in hand right now. There's no separation of those two types of editing, because if you're doing a copy edit, you may as well do the proof part of it as well, because you're right there. The line between them is so thin that it may as well not exist. What proof editing used to be was, once the press people laid it out, they would run off a couple copies, and then their proofers would go through and they would mark up where the lines didn't work right, or where breaks would need to be. That was what proof editing was. Well, nowadays it's typos, missing punctuation, incorrect punctuation, paragraph problems, paragraphs breaking in the wrong spot, those types of things. So, but that's also the sort of thing that you do for a copy edit, just at a different level. So, like I said, you may as well do those two things at the same time. The thing that I've added recently is doing an editorial beta read. And basically what that is for authors who are either looking to self-publish, or they are looking to send it off to an agent or a publishing house, but they're not sure if their manuscript is where it needs to be. So what I do is I go in and I read it. I will take notes, and I will tell them if they have everything they need in their story, if it's a good story, if there's areas that need some work. It's not quite a dev edit, because they're not paying for that much of a service. But if it's something that needs to be fixed, I want to let them know. But then I can tell them, okay, so this is good. This is a good story. This is what you need to work on. These are the gaps that I've found. And I don't give them any advice on how to fix plot gaps or anything like that. I just tell them it's there, and then they go fix it. And then what I tell them is, this is your next step. So either, nope, you're done editing and you're good to send it off to agents for querying, or you're good to send it off to a publisher, because usually at a certain point, publishers and agents will then ask the author to do additional edits to maybe fit the market a little bit better. Right. And that's not something that I necessarily have any insight into. So I'm just telling them if what they've got is a coherent enough manuscript to be passed on.
Awesome. So indie authors taking note at home, and I wish to God I had known this when I got started many, many years ago as an indie. There are huge differences in the types of edits that you can pay for. And when you are paying out of pocket for this stuff, you had better darn well know what those differences are. You need to know what the difference is between a content edit, which is a lot of what Maya is talking about here, line edits, copy edits, proofreads. All of these are their own thing. And you need to know that going into it. But that's outstanding that you offer that service to newer authors that, hey, listen, will you please just take a look at my manuscript and tell me where I'm really missing at, and you're putting it in a position, realizing that this is not the final product. This is putting it in a place where it's respectable and it's quality, and I can pitch it, because whoever buys this ultimately is going to do a lot of different stuff. So there's no need in trying to take it the distance with a really fine line edit, proof, blah, 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 blah. So that's awesome.
Exactly.
What are the various services that you provide in terms of edits? Are you full service, everything from content all the way down?
Yeah, I pretty much do everything. Okay. I don't do a lot of content, just because usually by the time I see it, most authors have done 2 and 3 different passes, and they're pretty definitive on what they want for their story. I will tell them if they're, and this is something that not all editors do, not saying it's wrong, it's just something that I feel I have to give as feedback, is if I think something's missing, I will let them know, because I don't want them to then come back sometime and say, well, why didn't you tell me that this was a problem? Yeah. And so I won't necessarily tell them how to fix it unless they ask me. And I've had some people come back and go, okay, I recognize this is a problem. Can you work with me on this? And a lot of that is kind of the customer service side of any business. And really what I'm trying to get from them is for them to understand that, yes, I do care about their product, because of course I do. And also, well, if they come back as a return client, well, yay for me. So always trying to do that. So one of the things on the beta read, so if they decide that they do want to go with whatever the next step, if there is additional editing that needs to be done, and they go with me for it, I tell them I'll apply the beta read fee to the cost of whatever the next level of editing they do with me.
Oh, cool.
So that's a little bit of incentive to come back to me if they like my style. And if not, it didn't cost them a whole lot of money to have me give them the feedback. And they're not out a whole lot of money if they do decide to go with somebody else. So that was kind of a fine line I was trying to figure out there. And I do have one client and he just released the book as a self-pub, and I've been really excited about it. So
awesome. Well, actually, okay, well, before I go into my next question, I have to ask this. Obviously, you're into sci-fi. What are the other genres that you just enjoy editing? You do everything at Marked Up Editing. You can edit anything that comes your way because you're a pro.
Right.
But you personally, what are the genres that you enjoy editing the most?
Actually, I could do anything, but I prefer to stick with the genres that I enjoy, just because I read them. It means that I also understand what I'm looking for when I'm reading somebody's manuscript. And then I can point out if there's something that needs to be tweaked, and there's to add either to the suspense or to the overall story or the characters and things like that. So science fiction, fantasy, I'm working with Rob on the Eldros Legacy stuff. I love thriller. So that can be anything from like the detective novels, like the Harry Bosch stuff by Michael Connelly, or the Lucas Davenport books by John Sanford.
Yep.
Yes, he's one of my big ones. I have liked the Jack Reacher stuff. I have to read the current one to know if I'm still going to like it, because he's switching from Lee Child to Andrew, and I'm not sure I'm sold on Andrew's style yet.
All right.
Unfortunately, one of the genres that I used to read a lot of, but I'm not really, I have trouble reading now, is romance. So I try to tell people, it's like, I have nothing against romance. I'm just not the person to be editing your romance novel. Sure. Half of it is because I don't know the tropes for the current market, and I don't want to miss something that is necessary to be a good seller in a market that is really easy to sell.
Right.
So I try to be very cognizant of what types of stuff I like. What else have I been reading a lot of lately? Noir.
Okay.
A lot of the noir stuff is what I've been reading, and it seems to be coming back as a genre, but it's being reworked. So people are doing like supernatural noir.
Yeah, we had
noir.
Casey Azell on the show a while back, and she talked at length about what's happening in noir and how much she's loving what's going on there.
Casey's one of the ones that I love. Her The Second Chance Angel that she wrote with Griffin Barber.
Yeah,
I'm so waiting for the next one, because that was I was like, science fiction and more, and oh my god.
Rob, you got to.
Let's not forget No Game for Night, which is the follow-up to Noir Fatale, anthology of supernatural / fantasy / science fiction short stories, coming out some point in 22. I'm personally really excited about that one. But yeah, I'm in that scene as well. Like Maya, we've been talking about that quite a bit amongst ourselves.
Awesome.
Well, one of the series that I like, and Rob knows, is Glenn Cook's Garrett P.I., and it's basically a gumshoe in a D&D city.
Nice.
It's brilliant. Glenn Cook is a fantastic writer, and that's one of his favorites. And it's the Garrett, by the way, I've talked about him before. That's Randall Garrett, who wrote the Lord Darcy series, which isn't noir, but is definitely something you should go out and look for.
Awesome.
So those are the genres that I like. Of course, with the Four Horsemen universe, the Mill Sci-Fi, I'm a huge Robert Heinlein fan. And so that's when I saw the covers for those books, I'm just like, I'm in. I don't even care what it's about. I'm in.
Nice. Well, now that actually brings me to the next question I had for you, which is you are one of the go-to authors at Chris Kennedy Publishing. He's got a few there in his stable that he kind of sprinkles throughout his various franchises that he deals with, but you are one of the go-to editors, particularly for the Four Horsemen universe. So how did that come to be? How did you come to get involved with Chris and become one of the cogs that is, that makes CKP go?
So that all came about because I knew Kevin Ikenberry. I'm going to do a little name dropping here. I met Kevin Ikenberry through Kevin Anderson.
Okay.
Because I also do work for Kevin Anderson's publishing company. But I met Ikenberry, and he was just starting out with his Sleeper Protocol, which is the first of his Protocol Wars books. And I read it, and I loved it, and I thought it was fantastic. And then I pointed out a couple of errors to him. Because I'm shy like that. And then he was like, oh. And then he said, well, would you mind reading my next one? And I said, oh, sure. It's a free book. Send them my way. I'll give you feedback on these. And that started me as being one of his first readers. So now, anytime he's got a story or a book, he checks with me. I try to make sure that I always have availability for him. And I basically do one of the first read-throughs on any of his new manuscripts. So when he became involved with the Four Horsemen, he wrote his first Jessica story for the first Four Horsemen anthology, and that's is that a few credits more?
I believe it was Fistful of
Anyway,
Credits.
so
Fistful of Credits.
That's it.
There we go. Fistful of
Yes.
Credits. Sorry,
So
there's only been
that
like
was-
60 some odd books. Bear with us, people.
No, we're over 70 at this point.
Oh crap. All right.
Yeah. So I read through that, and I was like, oh, this is really cool. And then he's like, well, this is the series. And of course, like I said, I saw the covers, and I'm like, oh, okay. Twist my arm. Mex, yeah, there. And then he got Peacemaker, and that pretty much started it. So because I was enjoying the Four Horsemen stuff so much, I joined Chris Kennedy's mailing list. I got on the early review teams, and I did a few early reviews and sent, corrections, because Chris is really good. He's like, if you see anything that needs correcting, just shoot me an email, and I'll make sure they get integrated. And then after 4 or 5 of those, I was like, hey, Chris, do you need another editor? Because I'd be willing to work something out with you. And of course, that was it. He's like, sure. And so I've been doing the Four Horsemen. I've been working on Paul Piet's Abner Fortis stuff, which, again, amazing stuff. And now I'm working on the Eldros stuff. I've done a couple of the Hit World books. And I'm also technically first reader for Matt Novotny, of course, because,
Of
living in the
course.
same house.
Of course. Sure. Some things are sacred, man. Absolutely.
Yeah. That's kind of funny, though, because I told him if he started writing, I didn't know if I was going to be able to edit his stuff, because that's kind of awkward. And the first couple of times he had me look over short stories and stuff, you want to talk about bleeding all over the manuscript. I sent it back, and he's like, whoa. And he's like, okay. And he just went through, and I'm like, okay, if that's how you're going to behave, we're all good.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. Well, and listen, man, as writers, as much as we hate to say it sometimes, that's what makes our works better. We need to hear that. If you get a manuscript that has a couple of little footnotes here and there from your editor about change this, and you're done, just give it to your mom if that's what you're looking for, and let her read it,
Right.
because she'll give you just as much feedback. You want somebody who's going to come in and take a Ginsu to that sucker, because that's what makes the blade. That's what turns a butter knife into a blade. So yeah, we are very thankful for that. And that actually does kind of bring me to my last question that I had for you. Give me one thing that when you get a manuscript, all right, here's book XYZ. What's one thing that you love to see right out of the gate of a manuscript that pretends of good things to come? I'm working with a quality project with a quality writer here who knows what they're doing. And then on the flip side of that coin, give me one thing that you absolutely despise seeing. And when you see it, you're like, this is going to be a long freaking day.
Yeah. Okay. So what I like to see is basically a clean manuscript. And by clean, I don't mean perfect. I just mean that you've got some basic formatting put in there, that you understand the rules of punctuation and where everything should go. And even that doesn't have to be perfect, because I know that Microsoft Word does things that you can't always control. So at least an effort toward it. And once I can see that it looks pretty clean, then once I get rolling on the story, I love a good story. I mean, honestly, the reason I do the editing, being able to make the corrections, oddly enough, is secondary. I just love being able to get my hands on all of these stories before anybody else does. and that's kind of my joy. It's like, oh, I get to see this. And then, of course, the latest thing is being able to see authors that I've worked with publish their stuff. That's been pretty cool. Yeah. So the thing that I hate is that if they haven't even done the research enough to know what a manuscript should look like, if they clearly haven't even run a spell check over it, haven't made any efforts to do some basic cleanup on it, that's the ones that make you just want to go, oh, this is going to be so long. And
if I can interject, and from an anthology editor's perspective, those are the ones that get shunted away very quickly, because I don't have time for that. You don't have time for that. And my anthology doesn't have time for that.
Right. So one of the things that I try to do, because I'm hopefully one of the steps before you see it, Rob, is I try to get it into shape. And I don't know if I've got it on my website now. I should probably do like a resources a tab or something to give people an idea. But I mean, there are standard formats that editors, publishers, and agents expect to see a manuscript in. And that's something that people should make sure that they follow. As Rob knows, with anthology submissions, follow the submission guidelines. The submission guidelines are there for a reason. They are not just there to make your life miserable. It is there to make the editor's life easier. So you're not an exception, especially if you're a new author. You're really not the exception. So we want to help everybody out as much as we can, but do yourself a favor and make sure that you are doing everything you can to show that you are trying to follow the guidelines, trying to follow the rules, and trying to make it as easy as possible for the people upstream from you who are looking at your work.
Boom. A lot of awesome wisdom there, folks. Well, Mia Kleve, thank you so much for coming on and dropping what is some serious wisdom for anybody listening to this program that is considering writing a story, be it a short story, be it a novella, be it a full-fledged novel, and wants to take it the distance with editing and possibly even pitching to publishers. Guys, there's a lot of gold in this interview, so go back, take notes. One thing that Mia touched on that I just want to make sure gets hammered home, if you're looking to find an editor, it's one thing to find somebody who's just really good at being able to read grammar and fix stuff. Find people who know your genre. So check their websites, make sure that they do what you do, because exactly like Mia said, they're going to know the tropes. They're going to know what works, what doesn't, and more than that, they're going to know what's selling right now because they're in the market and they understand the pulse of what's happening in that genre here and now in the present day. Which, in the case of science fiction and fantasy, you need obviously look no further than Marked Up Editing with Mia Kleve. So, Mia, where can folks find you before we let you go? Give me your website, where you want folks to follow you on social media so they can keep tabs on what you got going on.
Okay, so my website is mrkdup.com, markedup.com, and I have a section that explains the different levels of service that I provide with some baseline pricing and a contact form. So if they want, they can just shoot me an email from that form. On Facebook, it's Marked Up Editing, and it's MRK''DUP Editing. And that's my editing page. And that's it.
Awesome. Well, Mia, thanks for coming on by, talking with us. Right. It's been a blast talking food and books and writing with you. You are welcome back anytime, and we will definitely compare some notes at FactoryCon next year. You better know it.
Sounds good. Thanks for having me.
Anytime. All right, folks, that's going to bring us down to our halftime segment where we show a little bit of love to our presenting sponsor. That would, of course, be Chris Kennedy Publishing. Again, doesn't matter what you're into, folks, man. I mean, if you're into mill sci-fi, space opera, urban fantasy, you name it, they've got it all. Log on to chriskennedypublishing.com. You can sign up for emails, get free books. You can even join launch teams like Maya was talking about just a second ago and be able to see cool stories before the world sees them. And again, that's all there at chriskennedypublishing.com. So speaking of new stories that are out to the world, we have a plethora of new releases this week, starting first with a huge novel, huge event in the Four Horsemen universe, and that would be Harbinger, the final book in the Rise of the Peacemaker series from the guy who created all of that to begin with, and that would be Kevin Ikenberry. Rob, what's this book about, man?
It's about peacemakers, the Galactic Union's most capable enforcers and resolute negotiators. Their name alone elicits fear and awe among the Union's citizenry. As the Omega War unfurls, the Peacemaker Guild has fallen into disarray. The mysterious counselor has manipulated Guildmaster Rash's crusaders into a cutthroat, authoritarian construct determined to make the peace galaxy-wide. To deal the final blow and transform the Guild forever, Counselor gathers Rash and his closest allies at a remote location intent on assassination. Jessica Francis, Earth's first peacemaker, has her own reasons to gather her friends and allies. The search for her father, James Snowman Francis, has ended. The interstellar shipping magnate and mercenary commander has been captured by the Science Guild and a longtime rival with a grudge. As Jessica's plan to rescue him suffers catastrophic losses, her very world is forever changed. There is no time to recover, as Force 25, commanded by Tara Mason, are the next victims of Counselor's plan. To save her friend and still have a chance at rescuing her father, Jessica puts her faith in one of her father's mysterious friends, Bull. Together, they launch a daring rescue to retrieve Snowman from a Science Guild outpost deep within the forbidden Fourth Arm. When the dust settles, nothing will ever be the same for anyone who manages to walk away.
Booyah! Kevin Steverson, what are the people saying about this book?
Well, Cassandra says the entire arc of Jessica Francis, the entire rise of the Peacemaker series, and more have all been leading to this. Jessica Francis, Tara Mason, and so many more have no shortage of enemies, as the Galactic Union tears itself apart from within and without. More than anything, we finally learn the answer to one of the great mysteries of 4HU. Where is Snowman, and what does he know? Mouse says twists and turns in the plot make this a stellar book. The storyline was good, and the characters were not bigger than life. Kindle customer, as we get closer to the end of the series, maybe we see a lot of what we thought we knew we didn't. Harbinger is another good read in the 4HU.
Awesome. Well, as noted, we have many new releases this week. Next up would be one from some series called Salvage. Kevin, is that right? Salvage title?
Yeah.
What's
Yeah,
another anthology? What's this one all about?
It takes more kinds. It's just, there's thousands of known races in the universe, 8,000 years in the future, which is when Salvage takes place. And so these are more stories of the different races and things happening. Some of them interact with Salvage. Some of them plan to interact with Salvage. Several of these will become books. As a matter of fact, at midnight, a book off of one of these stories, A Nest of Stars, comes out by Matt Novotny.
Nice. For folks paying attention at home, that will be out by the time this goes live.
Right. So not only is there an anthology for you to grab, there's a new novel in the Salvage universe. And that makes number 17 in Salvage universe in 3 years.
Nice.
18 if you want to count my my collection of short stories, Orbital Defense Corps, because the last story is a Salvage story. But yeah, there's 17 novels in the universe now.
Nice. From what I understand, folks, the book that Kevin just referenced there, A Nest of Stars, which, again, will be out by the time this episode gets to your podcast machine, whichever that may be. That's from Matt Novotny. There's actually a preview of that, a little taste of that, if you will, in the anthology, It Takes More Kinds. So if you want a little appetizer, if you will, before you read The Nest of Stars, go grab It Takes More Kinds. Check out Matt's short story in that. And then away you go. So lots of big stuff happening there in the Four Horsemen universe. Other stuff going on around the world of CKP. Launch team readers. Talked about that a lot tonight. They are needed for... Rob, how do I say that word? Is that Gnama? Nama? Nema?
I
Gunema?
don't know. I've been struggling with that all day ever since I saw it.
You're the professor. I'm the redneck. You're supposed to know these things, sir.
I would guess it's more like a gnome than a gnu.
I'm saying Nama.
Nama? Nama?
That's what I'm thinking.
I'm calling it Nama. We're going to get Paul Piat on here, and he's going to tell us how it goes. All right, he's going to kill us is what he's going to do. Why are you butchering my book titles? This is the fourth book in Paul's Abner Fortas ISMC series. Basically, folks, if you like Space Marines doing Space Marine things, this book in this series is for you. And serious, and all jokes and all of that aside, I am hearing fantastic things about this series. Started with Cherry.
Wait a second. Did you just say Space Marini?
Space Marini. Hey, man, William Shakespeare made up words. It worked for him. Get off my back, man. There's no need for hate here, okay? Don't be cramping my style.
Lord have mercy.
It's all going down. It's all going downhill from here, folks. Chris is like, I can't believe I paid to sponsor this.
Mr. Piat, let me apologize for everybody here. It's a great series. Really, it is.
It is. I've enjoyed what I've read of it, and he might have some other stuff that might fall in my domain that I'm kind of curious about too. But that's getting way ahead of things.
Yeah. All righty. Well, typically we do an open segment here. This one's running pretty long, so we're going to go ahead and kind of keep it short. Any news you guys want to report from FactoryCon now that you're back? And then also, Kevin, you're getting ready to hit the roads for the 20 Books Conference out in Las Vegas. So lots of authorly stuff going to be happening there. Any highlights, any things you guys want to plug from either of those events before we move on to our Podmail segment?
I just want to say I finished Talons and Talismans 2 to get it sent out to the advanced readers at FactoryCon. That was my big project, and that comes out on Tuesday, and the advanced reader response that I've gotten so far has been really excited, not simply about having all the stories that are in there, because there are some fantastic ones from like Dave Butler and Quincy Allen and such like that, but it's also probably our biggest first taste of the Eldris Legacy project, because it's got 8 stories from that project, sort of a lead-in to Kevin the Unkillable, which comes out in December. So that was my big thing that I had to get done, and boy, finishing those stories and looking at that final product, I'm excited. Really good crew of writers I get to work with.
Awesome. Kevin, how about you, man? You got anything you want to plug before we hit the pod mail?
Yeah, when we get out here to 20 books, CKPI, which is Chris Kennedy Publishing International, myself, Mark, and Bill, we're going to sit down with Chris and plan some dates, because we've got 3 books ready to go. Obviously, for our audience, it might not mean as much, but these are actually in the German language, and they're going to be published in Germany. So, yeah, so the CKP International is up and running, and we're going to have some dates and finalize some things. But all the translations and the first readers in the native language and all that kind of stuff is done for 3 books right now. So that's coming.
Big things, man. Big
nice job.
Things. Yep, no doubt. That's heavy duty. All right, moving on to Podmail. Let's see what the listeners got to say, shall we?
You've got mail.
Okay, first question comes to us from... Let me get my Podmail stuff here. First question comes to us from Malcolm. Like all of you, I've long since grown tired of all of the retreads, reboots, remakes, retunes, retcons, blah, 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 blah that Hollywood insists on cranking out these days. I'm also a huge fan of Denis Villeneuve, and Dune was one of my favorite books growing up. So, having said that, I will admit that I was one of the first to go out and check out the new iteration of this franchise that I love so much. Holy Jeepus! All caps there. What a fantastic film. Did you guys see the new Dune movie? And if so, what were your thoughts? Rob, you've seen this one, right?
Yeah, as a matter of fact, we saw that sort of as a crew on the last night of FactoryCon. Talk about concentration of geekness there in the theater with the Kennedys and the Wandries and Stallings and I and Marisa and her sweetie Jeremy. I mean, goodness gracious, that was some geekery. But man, we all loved it. Mark, who is not necessarily known for jumping in full throttle with things that mess with his way of, his memories, was ecstatic in part because there was so much of it that was directly from the book. Clear that they actually took the book into consideration and really cared about trying to do something. They made changes. Movies always have to make changes.
Sure.
But all of the changes I saw were fantastic and really well done. It's paced in a way that was refreshing, I thought. So many movies that are in the geek world rely upon speed, energy, explosions, special effects. All of these things were in Dune. But what it was really about were the characters and their growth, Paul's growth, his mom's growth, all his father's, doing what he can to try and make this work, and all the things that you expect from the grand sweeping epic that is Dune. Those characters were there. They didn't rely upon cheap special effects. They didn't rely on vivid colored eyes, for example. The blue eyes were there. But like so much else in this film, they're a perfect example. The blue eyes were there, but they were subtle. They didn't scream, "Hey, we've got blue eyes," just like the book. How cool are we?
Right.
They were like, they're blue eyes.
Did they have Sting in a space diaper? That's
they did
what
not
I
have
wanna know.
Sting in a space diaper, but other than that, it was really, really good.
All right, so 5 stars from Rob Howell. Kevin,
Yes.
did you stick around and catch Dune?
I did not. We had left a couple days before that, so I haven't seen it yet.
Okay.
And I'm in a small town, so it's probably at the theater, but I'd probably be the only one in there if I go see it now. So, I might wait till and just watch it here at the house.
All right. Yeah. Natalie and I have been.
I will say.
You're about to make the point. Go for it.
Yeah, I am. This is a movie worth seeing in the theater. The grand sweeping vistas of the visuals matter. Now again, it didn't rely on special effects. That didn't mean it wasn't a grand epic, and that the scope of the ships, the size of things that they did with the worms, and so well done to give it that grand epic feel. I'm going to try and go see it in the theater for the second time. Let me put this in perspective. This is literally the first movie I've seen in over 5 years in the theater. And it will be the first movie I've seen multiple times in the theater, if I can get to go do it. It's the first one I've wanted to see multiple times in the theater since Return of the King.
Oh, wow. Okay. So that's definitely a 5-star review from Rob Howell, folks.
It is.
I could go downstairs and watch it right now on HBO Max if I wanted. I don't. I very much want to make it to the theater. That's something that, again, Natalie and I have talked about pretty much since it dropped, and we've just been too slammed with buying houses and do everything we're doing here in Florida to make it happen. But it is very much on the list. I haven't seen it yet, but it's that one's on up there, and I don't want to watch it on TV. That's one I definitely want to catch on the big screen. All right, next question comes to us from Megan. What's up, dudes? I'll be the first to admit that I absolutely detested Jared Leto's take on the Joker in the Suicide Squad and the various other DCEU films. It was crap. Plain, pure, and simple. I don't know that I can say I'm getting the same vibe from Morbius, though. Dare I say there's potential here? What are your thoughts now that we've seen the new trailer? Yeah, I mean, it had a very Blade feel to me. I also love the fact that movie trailers now are riding and dying on classic, like, covers of classic rock music. I don't understand why this generation just can't make epic music themselves, why we have to keep going back to our generation stuff. I'm not saying that's an indictment on you guys and your music and that our stuff's world's better, but I could be. I don't know. We can have that debate. We can have that debate for another time.
We should have that debate because I've seen a very interesting comment on this, so table that.
Okay.
There's really an interesting challenge.
I was just taking a dig at modern day pop music because I never really miss an opportunity to do that.
I understand, but there's an interesting societal thing that's happened that I kind of think is fun.
Okay, all right, we'll put that on the ledger for the next one. But yeah, back to Morbius. I'm not a big Jared Leto fan. 30 Seconds to Mars guy. I hated his take on the Joker too, but I'm also the first one to admit that movie was just pure tea garbage. DC just has a nasty way, they always have, of stepping in the middle of a film and throwing their weight and their money around and just crushing a good product. They took a dump all over Justice League. They took a dump all over the first Suicide Squad film. They took a dump all over Wonder Woman 1984. Like, it's just what they do. So I'm careful not to hold too much of the failure that was that iteration of the Joker on Jared Leto. You know, this could be interesting. Michael Morbius is a very interesting character. If this is done right, and it goes back to exactly what Rob was just talking about with Dune, give us characters that live and breathe. You know, give us characters that grow and that make mistakes and that rise above. That's what we want to see. Comic book tropes are tired on the big screen. There is nothing new under the sun now in a comic book film. So now you really do need to give us good characters. Otherwise, this is just another one that I can get on Redbox and be done. I hope that's not the case. I think the Morbius character is a very interesting character, and if done right, could be this could be a fun film to watch, but we'll see. But we'll see. I'm with you. I do believe that the trailer does give you a little bit of optimism that maybe they've got something here, and we'll check it out. Will I pay theater prices to go see it? Don't know. We'll give that time. Anybody else watch the Morbius trailer? If so, what'd you think?
I loved the comics when I was, a kid in the 70s.
Yeah.
So, he started out, he was him against Spider-Man, and then he ended up having his own anti-hero kind of comic. So it's I never thought I'd see this as a movie. You know what I mean? I never thought they'd go to something like this. So I'm glad they did. And I'm just curious to see what it is. Because it's not mainstream Marvel. I mean, it's really not.
No, this is definitely getting down into the weeds. Sony is very much trying to create their own miniature cinematic universe in the Spider-Man universe with these characters. They've already got Spider-Man. They've already got Venom. Now you're going to introduce Michael Morbius, and away we're going to go. But no, I mean, this is definitely digging off into the weeds a little bit, which is cool. You know, sometimes this is where they find gold.
Right. Yeah. So I'm curious to see how it is. So,
Rob, how about you?
Yeah, this isn't one of those comic book things I knew anything about ahead of time, so I haven't seen the video, and nor, I'll be honest, if I had, could I make any intelligent commentary about it. I could spew some BS, but I really wouldn't have anything knowledgeable to say about this.
All right, fair enough. Morbius, folks. It's I know I've got it up on Twitter. I'm pretty sure several other people do. At Ian J. Malone. Go find me. Last question comes to us from Paul. I've heard you guys debate beers on this show. I've heard you guys debate barbecue on this show. I've even heard you guys debate cake versus pie on this show. Parentheses, team pie all day long, by the way. Never once have I heard you guys tackle the ultimate food debate ever, pizza. So which is it? Chicago, New York, or Sicilian? Rob, Kevin took lead on last question, man. What do you think? What's your vote on the pie?
Yes.
All right.
I really haven't found a pizza style that I don't like, as my belly might attest. And so I'm happy to support pizza in all its forms and appreciate it. So... you want my opinion on it? Let's have more of it.
All right. Kevin, how about you, man? You got a preference on the pizza pie?
I do have a preference. I like the New York style. I like all pizza.
Okay.
It's kind of odd to eat a Chicago style pizza and having to use a fork and a knife, so I'm kind of against that. Little known fact, you guys may not know this, and the world may not know this, but when I first got out of the military, the first time when they put me out when I broke my back, I managed Domino's, and then I supervised 9 stores. And they said, hey, you can do a franchise. Except at the time, Domino's said you can only put it here or here or here. And I'm like, kiss my ass, I'll put it where I want to. So I opened my own pizza place. Before it was all over with, I had 5 pizza places. I was the CEO. I had some partners. And we had over 78 employees.
Wow.
So I spent some time in the pizza business in 98 through about 2003. And the New York style is what I did.
All right.
So it was down by Fort Benning, and I've had soldiers from New York come in there and say, hey, this is the closest thing to home.
Wow.
And so one of the reasons for that is I had a sauce that wasn't as sweet as Papa John's, but not quite as bold as Domino's. It was kind of in between. Took a long time for me to find the right one. It actually had Romano cheese in the sauce itself. And I used an 80% mozzarella and a 20% provolone as my topping on top, not just 100% mozzarella like everybody does. So, yeah, New York style is the one for me.
Wow, I had no idea. Learn something new about your co-host every day. When I want to talk pizza, I am coming to the Steverson house. That is happening.
Can I still slap out a pizza and spin it on my hand? Yes, I can still do all that.
My man, I'm proud of you, brother. That is awesome. All right, I will. I am inclined to kind of roll with Rob on this. I do love all pizza. I'm not a huge fan of the uber thin crust stuff. When I was a kid, my mom used to make pizza at home, and she would do it in this like casserole dish type of thing that totally gave it that Chicago deep dish, real thick, hearty kind of a vibe. Couple that with the fact that my mom used to make her own bread when we were growing up, and anytime that was coming out of the oven, it was like heaven on earth. Still is to this day. Had some last weekend. I am a bread guy. So
and what? How do I get to her house?
Yeah, right. So I am a bread guy, and so the deep dish thing for me will always have a very special place in my heart because it makes me think of my mom, and I love that. I love that big, hearty, thick piece of crust piled high with all those toppings, and you'll give me that knife and that fork. And I will get on it. Having said that, yeah, man, you can pretty well slap any kind of pizza in front of me, and I am all kinds of happy to grab a slice and a beer, and I'll eat it. I do not discriminate against the pizza. So, but all right, that is definitely going to take us down towards the end of the show, which means the white flag is a-waving.
White flag.
Okay, lots of stuff on the radar coming up in popular culture, in sports, and books and writing. In Kevin's case, it's conferences in Las Vegas. Kevin, I'll go ahead and give you a lead on this, man. What's on your radar? What are you looking forward to in the next few days, next few weeks?
Well, it's not going to be the Georgia game this week. I think we're playing Charleston State or something. I don't know, East-West Northern Tech or something. I don't know. You know, senior night. You know how they do. They just they schedule nobody. But, you know, Florida did that one time and Georgia Southern beat them. But anyhow, I digress.
We love you, Terry Maggart. You are our friend. You are our friend.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to the SEC championships in Alabama. I really am. And, of course, I know that's in a few weeks or whatever, but I'm looking forward to that.
Okay.
So that's what I got going. I mean, obviously the conference is going to be great, and Thanksgiving's always great with the family.
Yeah, we'll have one more episode before we get to Thanksgiving. Typically, the final episode before Thanksgiving, we do a What We're Grateful For episode. So probably won't be any guests or anything like that on that show. It'll just be us. But yeah, looking forward to that one. Rob, how about you, man? What do you got going on the next few days or weeks that you're looking forward to?
Well, football, of course. But the NFL for me. We're getting into what I consider the best part of the NFL season. We're about the halfway point. We're in the meat of the season. We kind of know what teams are. We kind of have some idea of where their efficiencies are going to be and skills, and you know we're starting to see rookies take their chance and be something. And this is fantastic to me because I get to see all these great players doing cool things, and so yeah, I would say that that's what it is for me. Watching football at this time of year, one of my favorite things.
Awesome. Well, in sports land, this is the NASCAR Championship weekend coming up at Phoenix. I don't know that it's going to be as fun as what we just got at Martinsville. I would wager to say it will not be. But anytime there's a championship on the line, then that's good for business. Should be lots of action, lots of high-octane stuff. Obviously, we had a lot of fireworks at Martinsville last weekend between Alex Bowman and Denny Hamlin. Denny Hamlin looks like he's heading into this with his hair on fire. He's ready to get himself a championship. That would be his first in 16 years in the NASCAR Cup Series. This is a guy that, by all rights, he's NASCAR's Jim Kelly. Or Dan Marino. He's that guy. He's pretty well got all the accolades. He's got Daytona 500s. He's got wins galore. He's done it all. He's just never won the big one. You can make of that what you will based off of the way NASCAR crowns their champion now. Whether you think that's, whether you think there's integrity there or not, that's a debate for another time, and it is a very big one to have. But the fact is, championship weekend is this weekend, and they're going to crown somebody. Me, myself, I hope it is not Denny Hamlin. I think Denny Hamlin is an a-hole. And if you watched last weekend's Martinsville race, you know exactly why that is. He's arrogant, He's entitled, he's a freaking narcissist, and he's a putz, frankly. So screw him, screw his entire team. I hope he crashes. Hope he doesn't get hurt. Just hope he, just crashes out. Who's typing anyway?
Not me. I can't type that
that's
fast.
me. That's me. Sorry. I thought I'd put it on mute.
I just want you to know the trophy's coming to Dawsonville, Georgia.
Yeah, we'll see. So. Well, I'm actually rooting for Martin Truex Jr. to win this. I like Truex to begin with. I think he's a class act. He's a fun guy.
He's a good guy.
He's definitely an
is.
old schooler. Anytime you see anybody from the press asked, who's your favorite person to deal with, there's a whole lot of them that say Martin Truex. He's just a very professional guy. I also would love it if for the second straight year, the guy who won 10 races, did not win the championship. Because I think the whole NASCAR playoff format is one giant gimmick. It's not a true testament to a champion. It's a tournament. And listen, the NCAA has lived off of this format for years and done great with it. It's why we love March Madness. It is not the way to record or to reward a full season of excellence. It's just not. And NASCAR's exactly like that. If you want to know who the true champion is, watch the end of the regular season, and that's who the best driver is in the field. But, they wanted Cinderella stories and Game 7 moments. They got that. It's riveting to watch. Just means that your championships don't mean nearly as much as they used to. But that's the trade-off in the day and era when TV rules everything. Other stuff that I'm looking forward to, return of 2 television shows that I like a lot this weekend. That would be Yellowstone. Mrs. Malone and I will be very much in front of the TV for that on Sunday night. And then the return of Dexter on Showtime. I had a nice little exchange with Nick Steverson about that on Facebook. He and his wife are looking forward to that one, and we're all in agreement. I hope they're bringing this show back, Dexter, that is, because they've got a good story to tell. If it's another Dexter versus the serial killer of the week, then this is just trying to beat a dead horse for another dime. But time will tell which it is. So, all righty, well, thanks again to Mia Kleve. Hey, didn't have to drink, for coming on to the show talking about cooking and editing and, again, indie authors. I hope you were paying attention, folks, because there was a lot of good stuff in there. Thanks, as always, to Chris Kennedy Publishing for sponsoring this fine program. If you want to know more about them, go to chriskennedypublishing.com. Fill out forms, buy books, read about authors, visit events. It's just all right there, chriskennedypublishing.com. For myself, for Rob Howell, for Kevin Steverson, we thank you guys. As always, if you like this show, please leave it 5 stars on wherever you subscribe to podcasts. Tell a friend about it. Hit the button, hit the smash it, like it, love it. Whatever all the kids are saying these days. But for the gang, for myself, we will see you next time on the News in Hyperspace podcast. See ya.